Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to this video in which we are going to be taking a look at my Holy Paladin played on the 12.1 PTR in a Mythic Plus context, specifically here played in a level 15 Altar of Fangs dungeon, which is the all-new dungeon for the next season and incidentally is also one of the more challenging dungeons that we are going to face, as you can see from the massive AoE damage that is already going out here, even though these sorts of piercing hisses going through, that is not intended, so these are interruptible casts that should be stopped. Anyway, we are going to be looking at Paladins specifically, and Paladins are changed in Season 2 quite drastically, I would say, but also quite favorably at the hands of their new tier set. Now, the new tier set makes it so that each time you cast Holy Light, you will be granted 2 Infusion of Light procs, which empowers your Flash of Light to serve as a massive heal, all the while normally if you hardcast Flash of Light, it barely does anything, but if you have these Infusion of Light procs, as you can see here, we have them right now, and we can spam up the group quite effectively, even despite the massive healing debuff that is being stacked on top of it. Now, before this season, Infusion of Light was also a thing already, and it was also one of your more important abilities to press. So if you had an Infusion of Light proc, Flash of Light increases dramatically in its priority, as we again don't kick, and I use my my lay on hands here to save the hunter from dying. And at this point I'm already like, okay, if this is how the dungeon is going and nobody is playing any mechanics, where the hell is this supposed to lead? Anyway, going back to my previous point about Infusion of Light, the Infusion of Light procs were already a strong and somewhat dominant ability or talent in Season 1, but they were rather cumbersome to acquire, and their acquisition was also heavily RNG based. So basically, every time you cast Holy Shock, you have a chance to get an Infusion of Light proc, or 2 of them, I should say, and you can see those indicated here next to my character by these icons. I currently have 2, so I could cast 2 instant cast Flash of Lights. And in Season 1, the general consensus was, okay, if you have the procs, then you should use them at a priority, either for Flash of Light, but you could also use them for Judgment, but generally Flash of Light is the correct option here. So yeah, that was obviously a decently powerful ability, but at the same time, the ability was not very well controllable, and the Season 2 tier set fixes this issue. And in Season 2, you will be able to deterministically acquire the Flash of Light procs by casting Holy Light. So every time you cast a Holy Light, you will get 2 Infusion of Light procs, and with those you are going to be able to deliver some massive healing to your group in the process. This is so powerful, or has been so powerful, that Blizzard has already had to nerf it, because essentially what it did is that you didn't want to cast any Holy Shocks anymore whatsoever, because why would you cast Holy Shock, the main purpose of which is to give you Infusion of Light procs at a relatively low chance, I think it's 20%, if you can just hard cast Holy Light, like I'm doing now, and instantly gain 2 procs deterministically and at 100%. So as long as Holy Light is not costing you so much mana that this deterministic way is forbidden, you can essentially focus on casting Holy Light all the time, and you never really have to use Holy Shock. And that is also what players did. The Holy Shock ability, which is a core ability for Holy Paladins, or has been historically, has almost completely lost its value, to the point that players were not using it anymore. And just now, a couple of days ago, Blizzard have come out with a fix for that, and their fix is to introduce the first tier set in living memory. I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't remember any others, that has a negative effect attached to it. And the negative effect is that if you acquire the 4 set for Paladins, then Holy Light, in addition to triggering the Infusion of Light procs, will also cost additional mana. I think it's 50% additional mana. And that is very strongly felt indeed. So, with the new changes, you can, or I, on my Paladin, am able to cast roughly 11 Holy Lights before running completely out of mana. So if I just start with the full mana bar and then I cast 11 times, I will have 0 mana in the end. So obviously, this very strongly suggests that the spamming Holy Light to gain the Infusion of Light procs is no longer viable, and you will have to rely now on a mixture of using your Holy Shocks for that purpose, but also using your Flash of Light, Holy Shocks. And in this way, the Paladin rotation, in my opinion, has become extremely satisfying because you have a very strong base rotation. So I think at least here on the level 15 key levels, granted our item level is quite high, so level 15 maybe is not the most indicative of the challenges one might run into, but you can get through most of this even without casting Holy Light, so just with the Holy Shock rotation. But I think it's a very interesting rotational challenge that you have your base rotation, and then you can augment this rotation with Holy Light if you run out of Infusion of Light procs, or if the damage becomes so high that it's no longer healable. You can see me casting a Holy Light here, and immediately I can cast 2 Flash of Lights afterwards, because I know I will get those powerful procs based on the Holy Light. And yeah, in my opinion, Paladin's rotation, one of the most satisfying rotations in the next season, and the class overall also one of the, if not the strongest one we are going to be looking at in the next season. Simply also driven by the return of Beacon of Virtue. You can see it on the group here. Now I think both builds are viable. You can still play the double beacon build, but most high keys are currently being run using the Beacon of Virtue build, which is the one that I personally prefer, because I really enjoy the rotational challenge of having this Beacon of Virtue window. You see it's running right now. Now it has run out, and now you have 6 seconds until it comes back off cooldown, in which you need to bridge the gap with your other abilities and until this power window becomes available again. And I think that's a very engaging sort of gameplay loop, where you have this healing power window available very frequently, and then very short downtimes in between, which you somehow need to live. And again, you can see here we have the healing window available, and you can obviously time your Beacon of Virtue windows to coincide with the big AoE damage events that the dungeon is throwing your way. And I think this is, from a planning perspective, one of the more satisfying rotations that we are going to be looking at in the next season. Add to that Paladins also bring a Poison Dispel. Well, I mean, almost every healer does, except for priests, poor priests. It's a little bit sad, actually, especially since priests in the next season are not otherwise overpowered, I would say. Both priest specs feel very satisfying to play, in my opinion. So rotationally, very well done. But yeah, I think Blizzard is really going a little bit overboard when it comes to poisons in the next season, because they are everywhere. Yeah, you can see it here as well. The High Evolutionists, by the way, here after the first boss, one of the more dangerous mobs, they cast Envenom, and you can see it go out on the Hunter. I dispel it immediately, and now it goes on the tank, and it can stack up, but it's interruptible. And then they cast Evolve, and Evolve is a non-interruptible cast, but it can be CC'd. And it should be CC'd, because if it's not CC'd, they will, after Evolve, go into Mass Envenom, which is also sorry, an uninterruptible cast, but it shoots Envenom at the entire party, so everybody gets poisoned, which then becomes very, very dangerous, especially when this big snake here, Rattling Wraith, is sending its big AoE damage onto the group. It basically has a pulsing AoE rattle, you can see it here, coming out. And again, we cover it using our Beacon of Virtue. Now Holy Light, double flash of light, and you can see we can spam the group up quite well using the double flash of light. Still a little bit dangerous here, not perfectly played. I should have activated my Beacon of Virtue a little bit sooner. And also I think that Holy Light, yeah, is a great ability to be able to precast. So I could have applied my Beacon of Virtue, and then as soon as the damage starts ticking, make it so that my Holy Light is already being precast, so that the end of the Holy Light cast coincides with the damage going off on the group, so that you never even fall behind. So if you wait for the damage to go off, you can apply Beacon of Virtue and then cast Holy Light. For the entire cast duration of Holy Light, you are essentially not doing any healing. The group ticks down, yeah, then you get the healing from Holy Light, which is substantial, but still, you've sort of forsaken a lot of the duration of the damage ticks. So I think one of the main strengths of Holy Light is actually a planning component, where you can cast it before the damage happens, and then as soon as the damage happens, it goes off immediately and clears most of the danger instantly as well. That was already quite potent in Season 1, for example in Magister's Terrace, where you could use it to clear the Devouring Strike from these void elementals in the latter part of the dungeon, which was the big tank hit, and it was a big healing absorb, and you could just precast Holy Light as soon as it was happening, and then maybe another Holy Light or something afterwards. And now in Season 2 this is even stronger, because you can precast the Holy Light if you have such a significant tank hit. There is none like that in Season 2 from my knowledge, but if there were, you could precast the Holy Light, and then immediately, because you know you will get the deterministic application of 2 Infusion of Lights, immediately cycle into 2 Flash of Lights, which also transfers your Beacon of the Savior to the target, and therewith deliver an absolute ton of healing almost instantly, simply by virtue of having precast the ability already. So yeah, definitely exciting times for Paladin. And truth be told, here on level 15, I don't struggle very much at all. I think Paladin is more than capable of handling anything that this dungeon is throwing their way. So I think in terms of maximum healing power potential, as our DK runs in here and dies, he drew aggro. I should probably have lay on handsed him or given him Blessing of Protection, but because he had his own magic shield applied, there's actually a bit of a problem here with the overshields add-on which I have. The magic shield also just counts as a shield, and you can't really tell the difference. So that probably made the DK seem safer to me than he actually was. So on the add-on optimization front, and I'm not a big guy for optimizing add-ons at all, there's definitely some room for development. But I also think I want to do a video, sort of a minimalist guide to add-ons, because I really think that you don't really need that many add-ons. This is just basic Blizzard UI. Nothing really special going on here. Yeah, the shields from overshields, I think that's important. And it's also for a company that suggested that they would eliminate add-ons completely. The inability to display shields on their own party frames, and party frames only being useful to start with when you manually transfer them into the raid frames, because the normal party frames, well, those are just unusable. But yeah, you should be able to see shields on your teammates. Well, at least you can now see more than 3 HOTS or whatever it was. So healing over time effects, back only 1.5 years ago or so, you could only see like 2 or 3 buffs on your party. So Druid was basically unplayable with the base UI. Anyway, tangent, not that important, but it's definitely something, yeah, that gets my metaphorical juices flowing sometimes. Anyway, I think that's something I might have in store at some point in the future. This boss is pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but he is also a pretty big rot healing check because he is applying a poison debuff. It's actually not a poison debuff. It's just an undispellable debuff to the entire party, and this debuff lasts for a very long time. Here it comes. Synchronized Venom. Everybody is going to be affected. And in this case, that's not true at all. Apparently, warriors can spell reflect it, while at the same time DKs can immune it with their anti-magic bubble. So in any event, if that's not the case, the entire group will take pretty high ticking damage for the entire duration of the Venom. It was actually pretty interesting that it is so easily avoidable. This would also suggest that Night Elves can probably avoid it too, if it is avoidable in this way, and then obviously any other classes with magic immunities can do the same, in which case this boss will become a trivial non-issue. The only mechanic that needs to be paid attention to is here. It will pull in, and you need to pull the vines out of the boss in order to make it pop, and this needs to happen quickly, because if it doesn't happen, then he will keep stacking damage onto the group, similar to the Banshee boss in Windrunner Spire in Season 1, and this damage becomes unhealable very fast. So just go in, bring the vines out, and yeah, that will solve the problem almost immediately. Yeah, other than that, very, very straightforward. Was one of the easier bosses, I would say, if you can comfortably meet the rot healing check, but at least so far I have not run into any issues here, and obviously these kinds of rot healing checks I quite like, because they require you to be able to run a potent rotation, and you need to know what you are doing. But if you do know what you are doing and how your rotation is optimally played, then you can comfortably meet these checks quite easily, because there is no unforeseen additional damage going on. It doesn't depend on your reactive prowess and so on. It's more like a DPS. If as a DPS player, you are good at your rotation and you know which sort of rotation to use in which context, so for AoE, for single target and so on, then you will do very high damage. And yeah, having these kinds of this kind of logic applied to healers as well, I think is pretty good in some situations. I would not want everything to be rot-like this, but I think it's good to have sort of fights like this as well. And again, here also a lot of poison debuffs, and specifically looking at this fight, I think most of them are interruptible. But man, yeah, that would have been really rough for a priest. So I was dispelling the poisons all the time. They also stack. Sometimes people have 3-4 stacks of the poison, which is very dangerous. And if you can't dispel them at all, that is going to be quite problematic. As we fight this little mini-boss here, he infests individual players, which deals some damage, and then it spawns an absolute boatload of adds. Great fight for DPS players who love cleaving, yeah, especially for demon hunters. Back in the day when I was playing Fury Warrior, I would always get mad at fights like this, because I'm target capped, and then the demon hunter go I-beam, and everything, their damage on the damage meter just goes through the roof. But yeah, as a DPS player, probably highly fun, these kinds of fights. And as a healer, you can also do some damage, and it's generally the difficulty of this serpent fight, given that you sort of have to summon it by destroying the totems, so far has been quite low. I mean, there is some damage going on, but you can cover it quite comfortably with your Beacon of Virtue window. As we progress into the last area of the dungeon, which is also one of the more challenging, but usually you leave out this mob over there. I think he's quite dangerous. I saw that on a stream. I've never played him, but I saw from a streamer playing this dungeon, and they were absolutely struggling with this mini-boss. But you don't have to play it. Okay, no, it's not a mini-boss, it's those ones. Yeah, okay, those are very difficult indeed. They cast a sort of a poison AoE that shoots out lines to the sides. And it is Toxic Surge going off now. And it would seem that you only need to dodge the lines, but that's actually not what's happening. What's happening is that they are pulsing very high AoE damage onto the group for the entire duration. So you can see me here, quite a sort of unexpectedly high damage that's coming our way, and I'm struggling a little bit to recover the group. So yeah, with these kinds of mobs, be very careful of the damage that is going out, as it can be very high. I do, however, plan to make comprehensive dungeon guides at the start of the season. I'm still waiting for MDT to sort of update its database, because it's very cumbersome and very difficult to get the real abilities for all of the trash mobs in the dungeon, because they are not included in the dungeon journal. So as soon as MDT is going to have the final abilities of all the trash, I will immediately get to work and make the dungeon guides, which will go out primarily on this channel and then in an aggregated form on the main channel as well, which should sort of help with getting started in the next season as well. As we fight additional mobs here, which are sort of reminiscent of the mobs at the very start of the dungeon. Generally speaking, this dungeon, from a throughput perspective, throughput requirement perspective, is one of the more difficult ones, as many of the fights have very high healing requirements, but the healing in the dungeon is highly AoE leaning and highly plannable. So for the most part, the dungeon damage is just big AoE damage, often also in form of healing absorbs. So it's really about being able to have a potent AoE healing rotation. As this final pack here, I think, will be a sort of a bug stomper in the end. You can see what happened here actually. Is that a planned mass envenom? Or is that interruptible? Let's see. Dismember, noxious venom gland. Yeah, that seems to be just happening, and you can see the entire group is poisoned, and now we also have this AoE damage going on, and we also have the healing absorb on top of it now. I should probably immediately use my lay on hands. Actually, I'm able to recover the situation like this as well. But if I remember correctly, someone will die here. Okay, Mass Envenom is going out again. This one is interruptible, so I think, yeah, that is the problem, that this one goes through, and these abilities stack on top of each other. Yeah, massive ticking AoE damage, and then this massive healing absorb on top of it, and the hunter dies here because I didn't use my lay on hands. Yeah, I sort of unexpectedly high damage. You can also see 350k HPS. That, even for Season 3, is quite a lot. But yeah, Paladin is definitely able to deliver some very high HPS as well at the hands of its Holy Light spamming potential. So arguably, in these kinds of fights, you want to really min-max your mana game, plan around using Holy Lights a lot, maybe even, so that you can then just sit down and drink after the fight. And yeah, probably Paladins shouldn't be too afraid to just leave fights at very low mana, if that should be so required. The final boss is not my favorite. I think it's cool mechanics, cool everything, but if you see, you have these 4 beams at the side of the dungeon, at the side of the boss arena, which come along these lines, and if any one of them is not soaked while this ability is going on, the entire party will just explode. And then party members who have soaked will get this green debuff, and they need to then soak the red line which the boss is casting. He will do one more, and as soon as that debuff runs out, here, this one, now we don't need to soak anymore because nobody has the green debuff anymore, so it's enough for only the warrior to soak. But otherwise, if you have the green debuff from these lines in the middle, then you need to soak it, otherwise you will die. So that when the green debuff runs out, it just kills you. So yeah, that's essentially the mechanic of the fight. Again, we run into these lines. If one is missed, the entire party will just explode. But we do it well here. It's a moderately high AoE healing requirements, but it's actually not that big. Then you need to dodge this red one. It's also a one-shot. Don't stand in that. And now he will cast his Bone Carver or Bone Slicer, or however it's called. And the 4 players who have the green debuff need to soak it in order to be able to not die. So it's on me. Stand still. other players position themselves inside of it. Hunter is outside because he didn't have the green debuff, he doesn't need to soak it. And yeah, that's essentially the fight. What I don't like about it is that, yeah, if it's essentially like the end boss in Halls of Atonement. If one of the beams is not soaked, then everybody will die. And at the higher levels, that's okay, because soaking the beams really isn't that difficult. But for pugs at the lower levels, do we really need these kinds of bosses with unforgiving mechanics like these at the very end of a dungeon? Don't have so much of a problem with it generally, but I think if they are positioned at the very end of a dungeon, I don't like that so much, because it sort of invalidates some of the effort that the players have put in, only to wipe at the end of the dungeon in terms of this kind of a mechanic. And it's, even if you know the ability, if you're not coordinated, I take this one, I take that one, there's some awkward situations, like when you're walking down on the street and you're meeting someone else in front of you and you're going like this or like this, and they are both doing the same at the same time. And in the end, that is being resolved, but yeah, it also doesn't have the problem that you die if you can't resolve it in 3 seconds. So, unless the person you meet is extremely aggressive. Yeah, in any event, that's Paladin for you. Extremely satisfying class. I'm not that deep into all the talent interactions and so on right now, so yeah, the depth of my analysis might be still a little bit shallow, but Paladin is probably going to be the class I focus on the next for my dungeon guides, which I'm going to be doing, and class guides, which I'm going to be doing. And yeah, if that sounds interesting to you, subscribe to my main channel, which is where that will be coming out. And on this channel, more commentary like this and more healer-specific videos as well. I put some other videos on the screen if you want to see commentary for other classes or for some sort of more class-specific analysis as well. I thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope you got something out of it. And yeah, subscribe if you like it. That would mean a lot, and you will also get to see more of them. And thank you. See ya.